what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'll be talking about Snow White. This is the latest of the Disney live action remakes now in theater. So this movie has been drawn out for years now. This was supposed to come out years ago, went through a ton of really just bad press, I guess you could say, that really led us to not really sure like what this movie was going to be story-wise, but now we finally have it here. And watching this movie, you can definitely tell that it went through a number of reshoots because there are a lot of ideas in this movie. But let's get into it. So Snow White is directed by Mark Webb, and I didn't know that going into this. I should have looked ahead, but Mark Webb, you know, I do enjoy him as a director. 500 Days of Summer, one of my favorite movies. He also did the Amazing Spider-Man movie, so he's got some pretty solid movies in his resume. But dealing with Disney and just probably a number of hands that are wanting to have ideas thrown into this movie, I'm sure there are some struggles there, and I'll be curious on the backstory here. But let's get into it. So Snow White, this is based off the classic animated Disney film where we have Princess Snow White, who is just known as being one of the most kindest people in her land. Her father marries essentially the evil queen, and the evil queen just mistreats Snow White and eventually casts her out of the village. She then meets 7 dwarves who kind of take care of her, even though they kind of don't want her there, and eventually she just comes across this old lady who gives her a poison apple, which puts her into this sleep where she can only be awakened by true love's kiss, which is, you know, that is done through the prince who meets Snow White at one point, and then Snow White goes back into the kingdom, and then, you know, of course, casts the evil queen away. I mean, it's a pretty simple story. There's not much to it. I mean, the original movie is like an hour and 20-minute runtime. Great animation, great songs. I mean, it's a classic one. I grew up watching it. I've seen it numerous times. Now we go into this live action remake. We don't really get quite that story. We get a story that has numerous ideas. And before we get into that, like, Snow White's just such a fascinating Disney princess because there are a lot of live action movies already for Snow White, many of which seem to want to take Snow White into this warrior style role, and we do get a little bit of that, at least nods to that in this movie. But here we have Rachel Zegler playing Snow White and Gadot playing the evil queen. These are like our primary 2 actresses that we follow in this movie. Going between these two, I have to say Rachel Zegler definitely carried this movie. I thought her singing was very, very good. We get numerous songs in this. Some are kind of catchy and okay, but it's definitely her performance there that really moves us through this movie because it is a little bit longer and we do get quite a bit of fat in the middle that probably wasn't needed. When it comes to the evil queen, like, I think Gal Gadot kind of has the look here and there, but her performance is definitely one of the weakest that I've seen. I don't know, I just didn't get much emotion there. It's just very bland, and especially when she has to sing and kind of the choreography there, it just wasn't that great in my opinion. And speaking of choreography, that was another issue I had with this movie, is the general set, because we are split between being at the castle and the village, and then we also, you know, of course, out in the forest when we meet the 7 dwarves and those moments. But when we're at the castle and the village, we do get some pretty great, like, you know, drone or like high above shots that make this thing look like it's massive, like there's so many people here, just a massive place to be. But when we're actually in the village, it just feels like an old set piece. It's very crammed. When they're doing the songs and the dancing, I didn't really see much movement. It seemed like there's way too many people all crammed together, and they could really just kind of do some basic twirls or almost felt like they were stepping out of the way. Like, it lacked that magical feeling. You know, going into these movies, especially like being Disney, especially the classic Disney princesses with the castles, like, you want that magical experience, and I just never really got that watching this. Everything felt very plain, very kind of like you were in a movie set already that was crammed. People only had limited spaces to move, and it just took away from that experience. When it comes to the 7 dwarves, when we meet them, we know going in that these were going to be like CG animated characters, and they're okay. Like, I wouldn't say they're atrocious in any way. I think I mean, you're gonna know that they're these CG animated characters, but I think the voices are fine. I think just their characteristics and what they're taking that mirrors from the original animated movie work here. It's just not anything like I would run to the theater to see, unfortunately. In the moments that we get the dwarves and Snow White is fine. When it comes to the prince, you know, the prince in the original movie, we just know him as the prince, and he's really only there for a couple of moments. One, to meet Snow White, to essentially like fall in love with her from her beauty and her singing, and then she runs off, and then he basically spends the movie searching for her, which we never see. He just kind of goes through word of mouth about this princess that has fallen asleep in this glass chamber, and eventually makes his way to her, gives her the kiss, and wakes her up. Like, that's it. That was his whole role. Here we have a little bit more of a story to the prince, which it's not really a prince. It's a guy named Jonathan, who is essentially a bandit with his group that are fighting in the name of the one true king, which is essentially Snow White's father. And when we get to that story, it's okay. It feels like, it's hard to know if it's just like ideas that other people threw in here or if it's nods to some of these other movies that wanted to move Snow White into this more of a kind of a warrior heroine, like that battles and will fight and things of that nature. But this, you know, it's a little bit more of a story to someone that falls in love with Snow White. They definitely spend more time together in this movie and build that relationship, and of course have all their various songs and things like that. And then, you know, the general story around Snow White, you know, comparing to the original, like it's a little bit different in terms of how she gets her name, and a little bit more other than just the classic story of being the kindest in the, you know, the land is what made her the fairest of them all. There's some differences there, and I won't go into those to you know, just to spoil anything, but Snow White, all in all, I wouldn't say it's as bad as what many are saying. Like, it's a watchable movie, but it's just not that great. I mean, it's forgettable. While songs are catchy, like, you're too distracted by bad performances or bad set pieces, bad choreography. You know, the dwarves, like, maybe kids will find them entertaining, but it's just nothing to run out and want to see. Of course, you get like some A-list actors in here that are trying to give it their all, but nothing really pulls together in the end. I think this movie is a little bit too long. There's way too many ideas. You can easily tell where some reshoots occurred, where things just weren't really flowing idea-wise because you don't really know what direction this was going to go in. So that's Snow White. If you saw Snow White, what did you think? Are you a fan of these live action remakes? I know we've got Lilo and Stitch coming up, which is one, from what I've seen, looks pretty solid. And you know, the terms of these live action remakes, like there's a couple that I enjoy okay, but there's some like The Lion King, this one, Aladdin, just not a huge fan of, unfortunately. And it's one, like, it's hard, you know, are these movies that needed to be made? Definitely not. Like, don't mess with the original animated. They're great as is, even though some of them may not be perfect story-wise, but they're just part of our childhood, what we've grown up with. But yeah, Snow White, not a huge fan, unfortunately. But if you saw it, let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks so much for stopping by. Be sure to like and subscribe. It helps out the channel so much. We'll see you again with more reviews. We'll see you soon.